The Entrepreneurship in Art episode that you're about to watch is unedited and uncut. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast platform for the edited version. Enjoy.
That's a great look.
I'm so happy that this will be visible to people.
But like quarantine hair is one of my favorite. Well, one of my favorite things about the quarantine. Like I hate all. Well, actually,
Should we hit record?
Yeah, I'm recording. We'll probably.
Okay.
We need a good entrance piece rather than just halfway through George's what he loves about quarantine.
No.
Hair.
Well, one of the things that I do. It's hard to say that I love. Like on balance, I wish that quarantine had never happened. Like most things, yeah, but like most things in life, there are good and bad. One of the good about quarantine is that I am not the only one with like the worst hair. Whereas in non-quarantine era, it's like my hair is just like, and it's just because it's just the way my hair is. But now everybody, it's like, oh, you look a little shaggy there, and because um, but so yeah, Carly, you got the clip going.
Did either of you see the videos that Alec Baldwin shared of his wife cutting his hair this last week? I love him. I have a tickle in my throat. Sorry. I just find him to be so funny, and I think there's gonna be like 3 videos just on his Instagram. And the first one, his hair is quite long, to your point, George. And his wife is talking to someone on FaceTime, and she's like putting all these clips in, and he's like, I'm so afraid. But the whole thing is actually so funny. And then by the end of it, he's like pretty much buzzed. But anyways, I'll link that in the show notes too, because it's like laugh out loud funny. It's sweet.
He's a controversial, like I love him too, and I think his podcast, the Here's the Thing, I love, and he's got that great voice, and I think he's a really good interviewer. And I find him very, very funny too. I thought the character in 30 Rock was amazing, and in large part because he's sort of doing, and he said this, he's sort of doing Lorne Michaels. So like that one of my favorite lines is when like Kenneth or something says, why do you have a blazer on? And he's like, it's after 5 o'clock. What am I, a farmer? And it's like a direct quote from Lorne Michaels or something. But a lot of people find him despicable. But I read I read or listened to his audiobook, and it's great and it's honest, and it was, to my ears, the most accurate telling of like the emotional just shit show of divorce that I've ever read through. It was just like I've never heard anybody capture it in that way, and boy does he capture it. But so I think he's complicated. Like he's definitely not without, he's got a bad temper, he's got, he's not without his he's human, but he just seems to wear his humanity a little bit bright, a little more overtly than others, and I like that about him.
Yeah. I have to correct you though, it's not to Kenneth, it's to Liz Lemon. And I showed my dad this
what am I,
yesterday.
Lemon, a farmer?
Yeah, and he's wearing a full tux. That's the thing. It's like 6 and he's in a tux. But I showed my dad that video yesterday of the haircut, and then we watched an episode of 30 Rock last night because I just had it in mind. And then there's also like, we were watching, I think it's still season 1. We just went back to the beginning because we've obviously both seen the show. And in the episode last night too, it's like, I can't remember why, but Liz Lemon either gets like a raise or a promotion, or they're just talking about money for some reason. And he's like, oh, well, put it in your 401k. And Liz Lemon's like, yeah, I should get one of those. And he's like, what do you do with your money, Lemon? Where do you invest? She's like, I've about 12,000 in checking. And he's like horrified. What are you, an immigrant? Like, some of his jokes are kind of like, I mean, maybe you could still say some of his jokes. Some of them you definitely couldn't, but they're just like, they're so simple, but they're like, yeah, we were both just like laughing out loud. I agree with you. He has been a complex person at times. I think he's generally seems pretty smoothed out these days though. Like he had a patch there, but I find him really endearing, and I think he's funny. I think he's smart. But yeah, anyways, that video is funny.
Before this becomes a 30 Rock fan cast,
Yes. Okay.
maybe we should address the fact that this is the first podcast that we're recording with the intention of releasing the video, although I will be posting the videos for all of the previous ones without doing any quality control, because I have no idea what we look like in those.
Yeah.
And usually when I edit the podcast, I take out some of the parts where we're talking over each other, because I'll just take out one person's audio when they start speaking, right when someone else starts speaking. So these are going to be beautifully messy. And I think the most ironic part of this is that this was George's idea. The man that 2 episodes ago did not understand nor want the pivot to video, and now is pushing us to post these.
There will be episodes now with his video about him saying he doesn't want these to be on video. So
well, and the very first words uttered on this podcast, episode 1, is Carly saying, "I would just like to say I don't want this posted as video."
Great, I stand by that for obvious reasons now.
But I mean, I think there are always threads, and that's very human, right? Like and talking about Alec Baldwin and his complexities and whatever, it's very human. This veneer that we all have, that we're somehow consistent with our thinking and our, it's like, oh, but you said that. I hate that. Like, I hate that. It's one of the most immature things that young business people do all the time. And it makes me nuts when someone will say to me, "Oh, but George, you said that we were going to do this." I was like, "When did I say that?" And like, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. I was like, what? But it's fluid. Things change. Like, you can't. That's not the way things work. And so, sure. I mean, when we started this, it was this idea of, okay, well, I don't want to be on camera. I never want to be on camera. But then you think about, like, well, you want it to be human. You want it to be just, here we are. And I consistency. I do. I get KPI. Your KPI consistency thing, Dan, sticks to my mind a lot. I think that's really, really smart. And like, that's routine. That's habit. But like, changing on the margin is important, or else you just get stuck and you get dogmatic. My least favorite quality in a human is stridency of opinion, stridence, dogmatism, just like concretized. I'm going to think this way forever. It's like, oh, great. You're going to be fun to hang around with. I want to travel the world with you,
I love that that's always your like barometer. Do I want to travel the world with this person?
You know who I stole that from? I stole that from, speaking of good sitcoms, Parks and Rec. And it was who's the April? Is that her name?
Yeah.
April Ludgate? Yeah, she's
Yeah.
great. That great character. What's the actress's name? I don't remember, but she's fantastic. And
Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
Aubrey Plaza, yeah.
And she's in one of the episodes. There's just some horrible, woman who's just the character, just annoying. And Aubrey Plaza's character, April, just goes on. She's like, I hate this about her, this about her, this about her. And then at the end, she goes, I want to travel the world with her. So yeah, I like that. So I saw some this thing's been battered around Twitter. This woman trying to explain QAnon, and it's just utter nonsense. It's just this word salad of nonsense. And I retweeted it. I was like, I want to travel the world with her. But yeah,
that video is like a minute and a half long. I saw you posted it. I got through like 10 seconds, and I was like, I get the gist. This is, I don't need to watch the whole thing.
I didn't even watch it. I'd already gathered enough information.
It's one of those videos where just looking at the thumbnail, it's like, you get it. You can
exactly.
figure out
I
what you're
had
in
all
for.
of the information that I needed.
Sorry. And you know that woman, like, that person is calcified, concretized in her thinking. That there is no words, no logic, no book, no website, no podcast that you could put in front of her in which she would go, let me reconsider. Let me take a step back from my bizarre overarching worldview that I have cobbled together from disparate sources of lunacy into this narrative that then gets further calcified by other lunatics just sort of boosting it up. And you know, I mean, that's where we are with the world, but I'm not going to do it in business or in my own life. So yeah, I might start with this premise of like, I don't want to be on, you know, video, but it's like, I don't know, what the hell.
The controversial side of me just thinks you described religion in a nutshell right there. But let's not go down that path. Yeah.
Well, but fortunately, you know, our president has deemed in the United States that it's okay to open houses of worship, and like I get First Amendment, you know, religion, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and all those things, but there's a fundamental ethics thing that's going on here that is so that I'm just so lost by it. I start every one of my ethics classes with the same, I'll probably change it now, but I start it with asking my students, when you go into a public bathroom, do you lock the door, right? And everyone says, you know, yeah. And I say, why? And the knee-jerk reaction is because I don't want someone walking in on me. And that is correct, right? Nobody wants that. I said, yeah, is that the only reason? And then they'll kind of go, yeah. I say, so have you ever walked in on anyone that's doing their business? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you like it? And everyone goes, no. I said, what's worse, being walked in on or walking in on someone? And most people say walking in on someone is worse. So if you think about it, you're locking the door in the bathroom, not just to keep someone else from seeing you do your business, but also so that you save someone else the embarrassment of walking in on you. That is ethics, right? And so while it's all well and good that you want to express your freedom by not wearing a mask or by going to church or whatever, there's an ethical element that you are now imposing your autonomy on top of mine, which that's not how societies are supposed to work. So ethics there's a difference between ethics and morality. Morality is my code, whether that code comes from religion or wherever. And then there's ethics, which is interoperability between people for the greater good. And so go worship all you want. But if you are then going to infect someone who then goes and infects me, you've now imposed your autonomy on top of mine. Right? So yeah, it is about religion. Sorry.
Why will you, and maybe you won't, but why will you not ask that question in ethics classes going forward?
Well, now I might update it. This is why I don't do
just use the mask.
Yeah. Well, I'll be like, okay, so are you wearing a mask for yourself? Why are you wearing a mask? Oh, I don't want to get sick. Okay, fair. Why else might you wear a mask? So that I don't get someone else sick, right? Like that's the ethical kind of there is a difference between morality and ethics. There's also a difference between ethics and laws. All laws are not necessarily, you know, a priori ethical, and vice versa. If you're driving down the street and the speed limit is 35, if you go 75, you're breaking the law. If you go 75 because your child is having anaphylactic shock because she ate a peanut, then, you know, you break the law. If you're going 75 because your child ate a peanut and is having anaphylactic shock, and you blast through a school crossing zone, I mean, it's, you know, like you have to be thinking about the interoperability of other humans. That doesn't mean that your autonomy is lessened by that.
I think it's also just accepting that the norms that we are used to are also fluid. So what worked before, you are allowed to change that temporarily or permanently. The behaviors and norms that are created within a society are not set in stone, which is one of the things that I find really interesting about American politics, is this focus you have on like the constitutional rights that were written so long ago. Like there's just this inability to kind of update thinking sometimes or to apply it situationally. But yeah, I mean, everything that you're saying is, of course, right. But whatever the rules or whatever the laws are, all of that is fluid as well. So
You have to be very careful of ethical relativism, right? Ethical relativism is using um, time or situation to justify frequently aberrant behavior. Our founding fathers used ethical relativism, and there's some sort of weird manifest destiny thing to justify slavery, right? And you see it all the time. You see it throughout history. Yes, norms and mores change, but we have to ask ourselves as humans, what are the kind of foundational ethics? I always go back to Kant, right? And the Kantian ethic is never use someone as a means to an end. View them as an end in and of themselves. And that can get tricky when you think about business management, because Peter Drucker says that management is getting things done through other people, but there is a quid pro quo. There's you manager will tell me employee a scope of work. I will do that scope of work, and then you will pay me. There's a transparency, right? There's a relational element there. If the manager doesn't pay you, or if the manager says, we'll do all of these things that are outside of the scope of work, or if the employee, there's what's known as a fiduciary duty. If the employee, instead of doing his or her job, is playing Instagram or something, then they're not in balance. Then they're using the boss as a means to an end. They're using the boss as a means to play Instagram instead of do their job. But
I've never heard
ethical
anyone
relativism
say
is,
play Instagram before.
what do you do with it?
You use it.
You scroll through.
No, it's a game.
You post
It's a
to
game.
it. Play
Play
Instagram.
it.
I've never.
But you play it. It's a game, right?
Okay.
Isn't it a game? It's a game. I mean,
I
it
don't think
sucks
so, there
up
is
your
a game.
time.
Oh, life
It's
is
a
a
game.
game. I mean, you can make that
Ah.
analogy for anything.
No, but Instagram's clearly a game, right? Like it sucks up your time. It's something that distracts you from boredom, right? So you play Instagram when you're bored, and then you rate
Do you
yourself
play a
based on.
book?
Exactly what I was going
No,
to say. It's
because
very broad.
because there's no,
Yeah.
it's not. There's a very clear game mechanic with Instagram. In the
There's a
same way
gamification
you play
element.
Scrabble. No, you win or you lose. This
No.
post was a winning post, or this. Yeah, of course, it's all dopamine. It's
That's
like
a matter
playing
of
Scrabble.
perspective. That's how
Yeah.
seriously you take your own Instagram account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, and I can play Scrabble seriously or not seriously. There are people that play it competitively.
Well, but
And there are
reading a book, I could be posting on
No.
Goodreads, right? And that's my dopamine.
Okay, you can gamify it, but that's an adjunct to the actual reading. Instagram is a game.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree. Politely.
What have you all written about this
respectfully.
week?
Can I just say one thing about games that I learned this week that I found really interesting?
Yes.
Solitaire, the game, was actually like the desktop game. I think it turned, I can't remember. Ooh, there was an anniversary.
So was
past week.
Pac-Man.
But it was a game Microsoft put out Solitaire to teach people how to use a mouse. And I did not know that. That was the whole purpose of the Solitaire game, was to familiarize people with using
That's
mouse.
really interesting.
Cool, right?
Yeah, and so it's really cool. It was also Pac-Man's anniversary, like 40, 50 years. Not 50, because I was born 40, I guess. But that's interesting. So there's a counter argument to my constant rant about skeuomorphism. We're taking Solitaire and skeuomorphically putting it onto the computer had a positive effect, and so it became a heuristic. It became a teaching tool of like, okay, use this. We're going to trick you into figuring out how to use the mouse by doing this other activity that so it doesn't feel like work. Whereas if you were going to say, here, if you drew like a diagram on like how to use a mouse, nobody wants to do that. But if it's like, okay, well, I love that. I love stuff like that where you end up learning new skills by accident.
I just looked it up quickly, the Verge article that I saw. Apparently it also was only 30 years old, which surprises me. But
Well, Solitaire, the game's not 30 years old, but Solitaire on a computer.
the like in Windows 3.0, that solitaire game, you know, and like when all the cards would do that.
Totally.
Thing, that is 30 years old.
Mm.
The Microsoft version. But yeah, so anyways, I thought that was just a cool thing.
No,
And I think that's
really,
like creating a game to help people or to push people to use your technology in a different way, or teach them a new skill, but without saying, here's the book how to learn how to use a mouse. I had never heard that before.
this is all I think about, right? I mean, because you know, as an educator, it's like always this thought process of how can I convey it? I mean, and one of the big projects that I'm working on with Berkeley, this Radar project, is really, which is a licensing platform for Berkeley students to put their music on a database, blockchain database, and then allow for film students to license their work. Sounds simple. There's a lot that can be read about. I've been working on this like Don motherfucking Quixote for I don't know how many years, tilting at this windmill. But really, my Trojan horse element of this is, okay, student, you want your music to get licensed into a film? Great. Before you can do that, you have to go through this set of processes, and along the way, I'm going to teach you copyright law. Like that's the hidden agenda. And because copyright law or copyright is such an abstraction, and like artists don't want to sit and read section 115 of the United States Copyright Code. I promise. I've been trying to teach 19 and 20-year-olds, you know, to just glance at section, you know, 115 or whatever of the Copyright Code. It will never happen. And yet as teachers, like we continue. And so there's a carrot or a stick, right? So if you're in law school, it's like you will read that code, you will memorize it, or you will flunk out of law school or whatever. In undergrad, like yeah, you might not get a good grade, but there's no, so it has to be a carrot approach. It has to be like, if I do this, there'll be some reward. And so your solitaire example is, well, there's a reward there. There's a dopamine hit. There's a thing of, wow, I actually won at Klondike Software, and along the way, without even knowing it, I learned how to use a mouse. I want the same thing with like, wow, my song got licensed, but along the way, I learned, you know, that I've got these exclusive rights for my song. That's how people learn. And I'm constantly trying to figure out better ways to do that. I love that solitaire thing. I'm going to steal that.
Can you summarize section 115 for us, why it's so important to know in a sentence?
It delineates your rights, right? So it's not just 115, but that area of the copyright code talks about how a work is created. So when you write a song, the summary would be fix an original work of authorship in a tangible form. So all those words can be unpacked. Original, like what's original? Original is hard to define, right? I mean, we know what it's not. We know, like, if I write a song, quote unquote, write a song, and half of the lyrics are from Bob Dylan or something, it's not original. Or if I take a beat from, you know, Prince or a sample, you know, a work, like what constitutes a work? How does it have to be long? The Beastie Boys had a lawsuit where they were sued for using a flute sample, and they had cleared the sample from the label because they just pulled it right off of a record, but they didn't clear the sample from the writer of that song because it's just one note. So the court said, well, you can't copyright a note. It doesn't rise to the level of work. And then fix in a tangible form means you either have to write it down or record it, because the copyright is always about the idea expression dynamic. You can't copyright an idea, you copyright the expression of the idea. So if I, on this podcast, made the horrific mistake of just, well, no, it would work. It would because we're recording it. If I just sang some song, I came up with some melody and sang it, because we're recording it, as long as that is original, I'm not singing, you know, corn, and then you know, and then that I'd have the copyright. I would need to register the copyright if I wanted to defend it for infringement. You can't sue unless you register your work, but I have the copyright. And then so it also delineates what rights you get. You get the exclusive right to reproduce, to distribute, to display, to create derivatives, to publicly perform. Each one of those elements are ways in which artists make their money. And if you don't know those rights, you can't know how you can monetize your art. And if you can't know how you can monetize your art, you can't sustain your art. And if you can't sustain your art, you'll stop making your art. And if we stop making art, then the world becomes a horrible place that no one wants to live
That's a soundbite. That's we'll take that clip.
I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, like all the shows and stuff, like Yo-Yo Ma's doing a thing like where like he's just doing Bach, cello things, and he's like, you gotta listen to this now, people. This is humanity. This is who we are. It's not about all of this extraneous stuff. And some of these artists capture those moments, right? Where it's like, well, this is why, this is who we are. And as artists, it's our job to kind of help people see the way through these impossible times. I think, I mean, there's a beautiful piece called Serenity for the Victims of Hiroshima. It's just like, oh my gosh, and or you think about Picasso's Guernica, or these amazing pieces that just like I can't put into words what I'm feeling right now, but art doesn't need words. I mean, some people can, some people can put it into words.
Really hard to respond to that. Yeah, that's
Speaking
great.
of words,
That's a classic George rant. But yeah, let's talk about what we wrote.
It is hard to follow them up. Yeah. Yes. Well, I don't have anything like hugely substantial to point to this week, but I was shamed enough last week in the episode and this week about my lack of new pieces. One thing that I have been working on is creating kind of a template for the personas piece that I put up before, so that other people can.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Like I love that piece so much, and I cannot tell you how many times I have sent people to it. It's such an important piece, and for those who haven't listened, I'm begging you, before, go back and read Carly's piece on personas, where she lays out. I mean, there's probably not a day that goes by where I'm not talking to some client or someone, and we're talking about it. It's like, just go read this piece. Sorry to interrupt. I just needed to editorialize there.
No, it's great to hear. Well, Dan and I are going to do some follow-up pieces to that a little, but also taking a bit more of like, kind of, I don't want to say homework, but like a template type of follow-up also, so that people can better understand how to create their own. And I don't want to speak about it too much because we haven't got there yet, but then Dan will set up some ads for it. And so anyways, it's been on my to-do list for a few weeks now, and it just keeps being transferred from one week to the next to-do list. But I have actually started putting that together because Dan is holding me accountable, which is great. So that will be something that I can mention now, but not necessarily point to a finished product. But and to elaborate a little bit, when I say Dan will put up some ads, kind of this whole notion that I think it was just last week, we talked about, treating entrepreneurship and art on the podcast like a client. And so doing these kind of more, I don't know the right word for it actually, but like transferable and
prescriptive.
Pieces that other people can also take and learn from and build upon, not just only kind of ideas. And by setting up, some targeted ads for personas on the entrepreneurship and art, we can just show a really kind of honest look at how it looks as well, how you set it up, what the results might look like, So that would be Dan's area of expertise, though, the ad creation. But so I've been working to get that in a little bit better shape.
This is one of the things that made me so excited about entrepreneurship and art, is that we do these for other people all the time, and kind of because of the Some clients have an NDA, some don't, but I'm not going to document my process of creating and running ads for a client and revealing what the results are. But
Exactly.
I've no problem doing it with something that we own, right? And
Yeah.
it's the type of stuff that needs to get out there. But I guess for digital marketing more than other stuff, there is a lot of material about this. But I'm excited to put it in our own voice and use our own results and show the process of iterating, especially because these are the first personas we're creating, the first ads that we're running, and showing that, okay, whatever, we haven't done it yet, so who knows what the initial results are. But even if I'm not happy with these initial results, that's exciting because that's another thing to show and another piece to write about. It's, hey, these are the initial results that we got. We think we can do better. Here's why. Here's our next steps.
Exactly.
It's so great to document. Yeah.
And it's relatable content because we have a modest following too. So it's not like we're going to put up some piece and be like, this is how we generated, 1 million views in the first whatever days. Like, it's not going to be, it's going to be a kind of a more attainable view of it. And as you just said too, you don't want to share any client's information like that, how much people are spending or their results. I mean, that's something that people just don't generally want published, but we don't really have anything to lose by just showing what we're doing, being super transparent in an effort to help other people maybe just feel better about their own progress too. Like, you don't have to be breaking the internet or like have consistently viral posts, but you can, there's areas to improve upon and ways you can get better. And so I really like using the personas as a foundation to kind of test some of these things, because we don't know what will work. And I think that, like you said, it's exciting. It's kind of cool to show that as well.
Nobody ever does that. Why do people think that ideas or businesses or whatever spring forth fully formed like Athena from Zeus's head? It's not a thing, right? And I don't understand why people don't understand that the beauty is in the process. The beauty is in the making. Like I want this podcast is beginning to take some shape and form in my mind. I had now, after how many episodes, I had no I came at it with the mindset that I think one should, with a Buddhist mindset of, I don't know, but it brings me joy. It keeps me in the moment. And now there's sort of byproducts that are starting to emerge from it. One is this accountability thing, and I want to talk about that for a second. Like I deeply want, it keeps me accountable, right? Like, I know that I'm going to have something written every week. I deeply want to distribute that emotion out to others who need it, right? And so I want, and I don't know how to do this yet, but we can figure it out and iterate over time for whoever might be listening and whoever has a friend that they know is working on something. Try to have something, ask themselves Sundays, we record these Sundays at 11 Boston time. What have you written? What have you made? What have you done this week? And that little kind of Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder through the week, what have you made? What have you written? It is good. That's the difference between humans and animals. Like, we have a cognizance of our immortality, and so what we do with our time is all that matters. So if we can use this as like a check-in of an encouragement, I would love to hear from people who listen or read my nonsense or anything. What do you make? I'm vastly more interested in what other people make than what I make, but I'm most interested in creating or facilitating or organize a culture, a community, or whatever, of people who are sharing and making and encouraging others to make. And if we can just help on that on the margin, then this is a huge win.
This reminds me of a concept I came across recently. Listened to a podcast that was released like 2 years ago. But the concept is motivation is a myth. And the way we think about motivation or inspiration is that you have the motivation or inspiration and then you do something. And This was on the Not Overthinking podcast, and their argument against it was that's not how it works in real life. That's how it works in movies. But in real life, what often happens is you force yourself to do, and the repetition of doing is what inspires you. And a lot of times it takes a while for you to get that dopamine hit, that feeling of, oh, something's actually happening. I'm seeing results. And then that's the motivation, inspiration for you to keep doing it. I mean, the basic example is going to the gym, right? If you go to the gym one day, no matter how long you spend at the gym, you're not going to walk away with an 8-pack, right? But
Unfortunately.
but you do it over and over again, and you see the results, and that's what makes it a sustainable habit. And that's what writing is. I have to force myself to write the first few pieces, and I have to force myself to finish the video, to stay up until 1 a.m. to edit it and get it done and learn all the lessons I needed to learn to make me think, you know what, I can do this next time. Or great, now I've got 5 more ideas for pieces because I went through the process of writing this one. It's kind of a cop out though, because so many people are looking for the motivation or inspiration to write that first blog piece, and the answer is just do it, and that's not helpful. But
Yeah.
but that's the reality.
When you are in the act of creation, whatever that might be, you are at your most alive. And arguably every other time around that is just ambient existence. And because, I mean, we've talked about this before, like you can be creating and achieve that flow state, which is beautiful and transcendent. And other times you can be trying to write music or a business plan or whatever, any act of creation, and it can just feel like absolute torture and drudgery. In either case, you're alive, and it's all perspective, right? It's all like, I remember one time I went, there was a place up, a little shop, and I got to know the chef, and like he'd always, like, I'd come in just to get coffee or something, and he knew like I had sort of esoteric, or not esoteric, I think I had normal taste, but like I'd eat shit that other people wouldn't. So I'd be like, hey George, I just made some kimchi, you want some? I said, yeah, sure. And so one time he handed me a plate, and it was just like full of pickles and peppers, pickled peppers, and so I sat down and just dove right in, and I eat one, and it's like, fuck, this is hot. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not just hot. This is like, oh my Lord, what's going on? Craig, what is it? And he's like, oh, ha ha ha, it's a ghost pepper. I was like, you asked, it was just like, and so, and there's nothing you can do, right? Like you could drink all of the yogurt ever made, or eat all of the bananas ever made. It won't, like, there's nothing you can do except for time. But so, like, I'm sitting there, and like my eyes are watering, and like there's probably blood coming out of my nose or something, and like and I just go, okay, I'm gonna recalibrate this in my head. I'm going to, because it's not pain really. It's not like when you stub your toe or something. Like it's a sensation. And so, like, I switched it in my head, and I said, I'm, rather than fighting this, because I can't fight it, I can't make it stop, I'm going to experience it. And it's not to say that it still didn't cause some degree of discomfort, but it recalibrated it in my brain. And then it was just, wow, I'm experiencing this thing, and then it will stop. But I had that experience rather than fighting against this pain that I can't make stop. There's nothing. So it's the recalibration. And like in the act of creation, it's the same thing. It's not like, oh, this is making me feel good, or this is making me frustrated, or whatever. It's just, I'm experiencing something. It's being alive. What'd you write about, Dan?
Well, I spent my time reshooting and then editing this video. And we talked a little bit about it last week, but we didn't talk about this company that I came across while doing this research, this company called TuneSpeak. So in the video, I look at ads that artists or companies are running. The first two were Twitch and Spotify, which I talked about last week. The last I looked at, whatever releases came out that week, and just picked one at random and looked to see what that artist was doing for advertising. And so it's this artist, Kalani.
Oh yeah. Uh-oh. Dan, we lost you. Or I lost somebody.
Can you hear me, Carly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, you dropped out for a second.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
This is all going to be on the, the video. I love it.
Such is life. It's imperfect.
Such is life. So I look up Kalani, who's a major label artist. I think she's on Atlantic. See what she's doing for running ads. So in the US, she was only running one ad on the Saturday after her release day, so the day after. And it was to win an album bundle. Cool. All right. So I click on the link and it takes me to this landing page on this website called TuneSpeak. And it's got a countdown timer. It's like 23 days left. And then it had number of entries on it. And the entries, it was like 8.4 million entries.
I think it was actually 9 something. It was huge. I mean, 8 is still huge, but
it's and so I was massively confused because she's got a fan base, but not 9 million fans that want to enter, unless there's like someone is smart enough to write a script for bots to enter however many times. Unlikely to win an album bundle from Kalani, right? And then so my next thought was, well, maybe this is just, they're just fluffing the number, so it looks like she's really important. But that also doesn't make sense, because as a consumer, why, if I see that there are 9 million entries, I have so much less motivation to actually enter, because then I've got a 1 in 9 million chance of winning. But I said, screw it, this is the whole point of this video series. Let me go through the process. And so, and there's no information about what's in the bundle, which is frustrating to me. It just says album bundle. But I log in, they get access to my dummy Google account. So then it shows me all the different ways to enter, and it's points. Those, they call it 9 million entries, but basically what they did is they gamified fan behavior, where you can do all these different actions and you get a certain amount of points for them. So if I listen to a song, I get 100 points. If I view her Instagram posts, it didn't say like, it didn't say follow her. If I view her Instagram posts, I get 100 points. If I watch her YouTube videos, each video I can watch up to 3 times per day and get 300 points per view. It was just totally gamifying what would be typical fan behavior. And a lot of it was things that were, that corresponded to what Spotify's algorithm looks for when it's trying to decide what songs to add to an algorithmic playlist. Or so it was, and I am stuck between, is this genius, right, or is this incredibly cheesy and
yeah
you know? And so but I did the math, and it's, you could assume every fan that actually cares enough to go through this probably gets about 4,000 entries. And so you take the 8 or 9 million or so entries,
or whatever.
They call them entries though, which is
Yeah.
what makes it confusing. It was probably about a little over 2,000 people that had entered, maybe 3,000. But I can't reconcile how I feel about that, because on one hand, great, you are taking this one person and having them do all this different work for you. You are putting and some of it was like inviting a friend to enter the giveaway and do this stuff.
Sure.
So
it's architecture participation.
Yeah, and that's the burden of promotion, shifting it from the artist to the fan. But it's just so cheesy and
it's inorganic.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing, and this is it's I'm seeing this a lot, and I feel to a certain degree, partly responsible for its rise. But we talk a lot in this, and I know I am overdue writing about it. We talk about Net Promoter Score and shifting the burden of promotion, and the general thesis is that you learn about things from your friends, and so if a brand or an artist or whatever can get one of their existing fans to convert a new person to a fan, it's a much more durable connection. It's much more likely to happen. And so companies increasingly are trying to architect that out. I see it a lot these days too, where it's like, okay, we're going to give away a sofa in order to be, just like you said, Dan, you can win the sofa just by liking us, but on Instagram or whatever, but you increase your number of entries if you tag more people, right? So like, or share it or whatever. There's elasticity there, and I've like, it's got to always kind of come back to the purpose, not product, right? Like if the only reason you're doing that is because it's spam, right? Like if I start spamming my friends with some sofa company that like they're just quit it, George. Why are you tagging me about a sofa? And it's just because like I want to get, I got whatever people on Instagram following, I'm gonna tag all of them. They're like, you're an ass. I don't want, this sofa, right? And so like, and that's going to go back. The brands are going to get hurt by that eventually, right? It's going to be, why, so we're still trying to figure this out. It's much more important for brands to ask and to invite. The gamification thing can be, you can gamify yourself right into a negative net promoter score where it's like, stop spamming me with this thing, and like the barrage. And it's amazing to me that the companies can't figure it out. If I see one more time where some company that I have already signed up for their motherfucking email newsletter to get my 10% off asks me again with that prophylactic kind of, screen, like, we really can't figure that out. Like I'm not using a VRM or whatever. Like I'm hitting it with the site with the same exact thing, and I still get the overlay. And then if you stick your email in there again, it says, "Oh, we've already got you on record." Well, figure that the fuck out in the first place. Why? It's because the one thing that the customers hate more than anything else is you wasting their time online, because they could be playing Instagram and instead they're having to find the little tiny microscopic, light gray on white X that they have to try to make that motherfucking prophylactic thing go away that you've already given to them.
Yeah.
And this is a bad UX.
That gets into how customers use data and how much companies should be able to tie like anonymous Facebook pixels to an email, which is another discussion.
Take my pixel. You know what? If you want my pixel so that you can save me the aggravation of having to either find the
privacy versus convenience trade-off, right? That's exactly what this is.
Just take my fucking pixel so that I don't have to look with my increasingly blind eyes to find a tiny little X to close a window for something that I've already done. Have it. Elon, you can have it. Elon, take it.
We're going off on Zuckerberg is first, be on it.
Yeah, why is Elon?
He can have it.
I'm sure
Mark, you can have it.
But what we're talking about is growth marketing, right? Which really came out.
But use the right term, and this is like in terms of like a semantic thing. Growth marketing is kind of not gross in the Bill Hicks way. Growth hacking.
Growth hacking.
Remember that? Remember that? Like, oh, let's growth hack. Like
it's growth at all costs, right?
It's growth at the customer's cost. We are going to hack. Like hack is a pejorative term. I mean, I know it's sort of gotten screwed around like life hacking, optimizing or whatever, but hacking is dominantly a pejorative term. So a company that's like, oh, we need to hire a growth hacker. You need to hire someone who is going to make your customers hate you. Good plan.
Well, and growth hacker, the KPIs they care about are daily active users, monthly active users, something like that, which doesn't necessarily correspond with goodwill, the company generating goodwill.
It has an inverse correlation to goodwill.
Sometimes, but I think about the same cheesy tactic of enter to win this product by referring a friend. Morning Brew did that, and they did it just as cheesily as everyone else. They gave away a MacBook Pro and you get the amount of entries you get is based on how many friends you refer to the newsletter. And it doesn't seem to have had any negative consequences for them. In fact,
Yes, it does, because I unsubscribed from Morning Brew.
You unsubscribe from that?
Yep, and I was an early adopter. And I did the thing. I think I shared it with Carly. I might have shared it with you, Dan, where like early on, because like if you shared with 3 people, then you got the Sunday thing or whatever. Like they had lots of little tiers, and
Yep.
at first I really liked it, and I kind of looked forward to it, and it was very natural, and I didn't mind that architecture participation, and then it never ended.
And you get beaten over the head. Yeah.
And then I unsubscribed.
Yeah, which, this is always going to be some amount of customer attrition, but you also can't deny they've now built a huge media business and have
Totally
over 1
agree.
million subscribers, right?
Totally agree. There is a sweet spot, and I'm not shitting on Morning Brew. I think it's a great product. I think it's a great, I think, but I was an early adopter who turned people onto it, that got my little rewards, and then became fatigued. It's a constant kind of, I'm not by any stretch saying, I mean, one of our key pillars is architecture participation. Brands have to then take an organic net promoter score, customer's teacher, and expand it out. But the way that you should do it is create habits that have positive side effects.
The art is in the incentivization, right? That's
the art is making you continue to feel better about yourself for sharing. And there is a buyer's remorse thing. There is a consumerist thing where it's like, okay, I've done all these things. It goes back to Kant again. I'm now using my friends as a means to attain my own end, to get that MacBook. If I feel like I'm not using my friends, but rather I'm sharing something of value that they will actually like, then there's no remorse. There's no kind of karmic weight. If I'm just using them so I can get that MacBook Pro, over time the karmic weight of that will make you just go, I don't want to do this anymore. Over time.
tie it back to the mirror.
Yeah. Well, I wrote about, there was a question on from last week that we didn't get to because I was talking about Lord only knows what, but it was a great question about, essentially I think the question is about raising money. And so I've answered it, and it's up on the site. But I talk about 2 different things. I talk about one, just kind of general investment thesis and like understanding, time value of money, those types of things. And then I really try to frame up, there are really only 2 ways that if you're starting a business that you can inject capital, and one is through debt and one is through equity. And I kind of walk through the pros and cons, and I talk about kind of the roles of angel investors versus other types of investment. And I think it's important. It's a lecture that I give a lot, and I've never really codified it. So it's another thing that's really a benefit of this podcast is and again, accountability. It's like keeping me accountable to like, no, if somebody's going to take the time to write us a question, I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to answer it with all of my heart. I want our listeners or readers or whatever, what are you accountable for? Who are you helping? What are you writing? What are you putting out there? And I hope people share it with us, tweet at us or whatever, and we'll share some of the stuff here. But I want that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that piece and the?
Well, not more than I did right now. I think there's to summarize it, it's people look for money for their companies too soon. As a rule, as someone that's raised a bunch of money, that's invested a bunch of money, as a rule, you should, as long as you possibly can, self-fund. The term of art is bootstrap, where you just like, I didn't know it at the time, but when I started my record label, when I was working as a janitor in college, I was infusing my business with my own equity. I had $1,000 in a shoebox that I'd earned from cleaning toilets. I funded my business. I was the sole. I didn't take any outside capital, and then I, turned that $1,000 into 1,000 7-inch vinyl singles, and sold them for $2, you know, and then I reinvested that money. And the pros and cons of that is time, right? I mean, it just, you know, you have to, you can't grow as fast if you're self-funding. But the pro of it is, well, I didn't have to answer to anyone. Like so I dive deeper into it. But as a rule, there's sort of this romanticism of taking money in from outsiders. It's like validation of like, oh, I have a real idea because some venture fund poked me on the head. I mean, I always think that like the A&R historically, or record labels historically, there's a real straight line analogy between that and venture capital, where it's like, well, now I'm a real business because Fred Wilson said that he put money into my company. Or now I'm a real artist because Ahmet Ertegun said that I'm a real. It's like, yeah, maybe, but you know, it's you're a real artist when you make things and you find some listener who feels better about herself when she hears your music. You're a real business person when you put something out into the market and somebody takes money out of their pocket and puts it in yours happily. You know, it has nothing to do with whether or not you've been funded by some, you know, whatever. But
well,
I talk about the vagaries of it.
The term for that would be product market fit, right? As we
Product
add
market
to
fit.
our eventual glossary of
the emerging glossary. Carly's done. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's the glossary's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Did we all talk about what we've written about?
Well, we've got another Ask Us Anything we can talk about.
Oh yeah, what is it? Someone else wrote something.
Let me pull it up. It's a question about distribution, specifically for a kind of compilation album. So this is from this person named Francois. My associates and I.
Bonjour.
How do you say "stop that tickles" in French?
Hi, Sacha Touy.
You know, let's see.
There you go. My associates and I are creating a music collective called Yubaba. Associates, yeah. I wonder if this is either a young person trying to sound professional or a non-native English speaker.
It's called Baba?
Yubaba, U.BABA.
Baba Ganoush. My business partner, Mark, like he loves eating, and he often orders I was talking to him the other day, and he's chomping away on the phone while I was talking to him. I was like, it's like 1 in the afternoon. I was like, you enjoying a snack, Mark? And he laughs because he knows I was good. And he starts talking, and I can't pay attention to it. And I was like, well, what are you eating? Because I know it's not going to be something normal, right? I know it's not going to be like a tuna sandwich. And he's like, it's homemade organic beef jerky.
I thought you were going to say that baba ganoush is not a normal snack, and I was prepared to defend baba ganoush. I was not expecting homemade organic beef jerky.
Yeah,
So did he make it?
It was like
or
elk jerky or some shit. It was like homemade organic llama jerky or some ostrich jerky. It was like, of course. It's not like a Ritz cracker. It's not a goldfish.
Let's get back to Francois.
But oftentimes we'll be like get lunch, and I don't eat lunch, you know. But he'd be like, I gotta order lunch, and I was like, wait. And I was like, what are you gonna get? I got coffee. You get some hummus. I get some baba. He can't say baba ganoush. He just like stops at baba.
All right.
Back to Francois.
How do you say ganoush, Carly? How do you say ganoush?
I just say baba ganoush. I don't know. Is there multiple ways of even saying that?
So back to Francois and his associates.
Anyway, I'm going to summarize it. He's releasing an album of kind of EDM, electronic music, and there are multiple artists on the album. I think he even calls it a compilation. He's looking at different platforms for distributing it, such as TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, and he's looking for advice on what we would recommend young beginning artists use for distribution in the current climate. He says,
Great.
I'm not sure that the current climate matters too much, but should we try to partner up with a label to distribute our music or go through one of the above mentioned distributors at first while we grow in the first year? He says he understands TuneCore will be a great option to release singles, EPs, or albums, but do you think the format of a various release will be challenging to distribute on such a service, especially on terms of splitting up royalties between the artists? I have thoughts on which platforms he should use or how he should kind of vet them. But I think the more interesting question here is, should he partner up with a label to distribute the music, or should he distribute it through one of the independent kind of do-it-yourself platforms?
And I want to hear you on both those. And there's also the question that's sort of buried in there is the distribution of the money from amongst the band members, which I think is actually as important a question as all the others. And I'd like to pontificate on that after you're done with the other.
Well, let's just do the cut and dry. He's got a couple issues here. I think the most important one is splitting up the money. And so with labels and artists that we've been working with, that's also been a concern because there are featured artists. And as the label, we don't want the responsibility of collecting all the money and then paying it out. It's much easier if the distribution platform that you're using allows for split pays, and you can say this artist gets 80% and this featured artist gets 20%. Just an example.
Known as a letter of direction. And so, go ahead.
But so if you are a single party distributing this compilation on behalf of several artists, I think one of the key features you should be looking for when you're choosing a distribution platform is what are the they call it the split pay. What are the split pay features available on that platform? Because otherwise, if it's 12 songs and 12 artists and you're collecting the money in bulk, not only do you have to pay everyone, but you have to do the accounting and say, well, this song got X streams, this song got Y streams, and then use that ratio to decide how many people get paid out. It'd be a nightmare. So much easier. I don't want to promote any specific platforms, but just based purely on personal experience. I don't have experience using all the platforms. Repost, which is owned by SoundCloud, allows this, and they do have pretty deep split pay opportunities features. I believe Dashgo allows this, and it's something that's becoming more common. I don't want to speak ill of any, but I have talked with a couple other distribution companies and friends who work at distribution companies, and when I ask them about, hey, do you do split pay? It's always either yes, we do, and here's how you do it, or it's in our product roadmap. So I think that's the kind of feature that is going to be standard down the line. But right now, because it's not a standard feature, that would be a huge like must-have item on your list when you're looking at platforms.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got a lot of thoughts on this. First off, this is the promise of blockchain, right? Where you wouldn't need any intermediary whatsoever. A song gets played. We know how frequently it gets played. You code into the song itself your percentage of the writer or performer or whatever. The money gets fractionalized out. This should not be that hard. I've written an entire book on this. As a co-founder of TuneCore, I mean, I know of this dynamic. I haven't had anything to do with TuneCore in a long time. I know Jeff Price, my co-founder of TuneCore, he now punts people the DistroKid. He says they're the best. I don't know of this feature. I do know whether it will come. It'll come through some sort of blockchain technology. If you're interested in that, there's lots of information out there, and we can put links in the show, but show notes. But one thing, whether it's a compilation or a band itself, the key, and this goes back to one of the questions, the other question from last week about raising money, like you can form an entity for that. So you could form what's known in the States as an LLC, a limited liability company, where all the money comes in, rather than coming to an individual, it comes into this fictitious corporation or company, and then based on the contract or the percentages pays out. So if there are 4 songwriters in a band, or 4 people in a band, the money comes in, it can be whacked up that way. Obviously, it'd be easier and better to whack it up at source. in terms of the labels, you know, I never think there's a reason for a label these days. And this, someone that's run a label, unless you are a diva, unless you need big time radio, like you can do everything else that a label can do on your own. It goes back to the bootstrapping thing. It could take you longer by doing it yourself than if you sign a label, because in theory they've got relationships and money and all the other things, but there's always trade-offs. So, you know, historically in a record label deal, the label is going to typically take between 85 to 50% of all of the money that comes in for these services that they are going to provide for you. That may be the right trade-off for you. You might go, I'm willing to give up 85% of all of the money that comes in order to get these services. Do you have to do that? No. You know, the piece I wrote about Joe Pug in Forbes this past week, it's just him and his manager. Like, as best I know, there's no label, and you know, and therefore the money that comes in, they take it in, they divide it amongst themselves as they see fit. But there's no label that's taken 85% before Joe sees it. So it's a business decision.
Mm-hmm. Well, and best case scenario with a label or with an investor, right? It's their partner, and they can help you find that product market fit if that's something that's beyond your capabilities or expertise.
And I talk about this in the article. There's a difference between smart money and dumb money, right? So when you're taking money in from an investor, there are some people that, or label, there are some that just want a return. They just want, okay, look, I can get 5% annualized on my money by sticking it in some mutual fund or whatever. But I think I can get a higher rate of return with a riskier investment like an artist. So I'll just put my money in and I expect my 30% and whatever. That's dumb money, right? Smart money would be like, I have some network, some competencies that you don't. So I'm not just investing money in you, I'm also investing expertise or whatever. And you typically, as the beneficiary of that, get the balance is different, right? So if a label comes in and they actually do have a lot of expertise and you have none, they probably appropriately should take a higher percentage of the money that comes in. I always say with artists and labels, the more you bring to the table when you're talking to a label, the less they can take away. So bring as much as you can in terms of connection, in terms of data, in terms of actual fan base, and then you'll be able to negotiate better.
Yeah, it sounds like in this specific circumstance, there is no fan base, so they wouldn't have a lot of leverage, and they'd be entirely reliant on the label to do the marketing job and spend money, which means the label
and take all the risk.
Yeah, the label will take all the risk.
Yeah. It's a great question, though. So keep those coming, and you know, I think talking about them on the podcast is good, and then we can also augment them with articles.
Yeah, and if
Three things.
Anyone has. Before we get if anyone has a question, go to entrepreneurshipandart.com. One of the menu items is ask us anything. There's a form to fill out.
Yes.
Three things.
I love, Dan, last week you were like, nobody can end with a depressing one. I think that's a really good.
I didn't end with it. It was my second one.
No. I'm just saying that I want to end on
the third thing of the third person shouldn't be depressing.
Yes. Is anyone's third thing depressing before we get into this? No. I did not realize how depressing the whole Argenta thing was. Because I love this song so much.
Ship that sunk in Ireland and everyone died.
Just love that song so much, and the song makes me feel good. Although I'm that kind of person that gets a kick out of depressing songs, so I'm not. Anyway, I'm going to go first because I don't know that I've gone first on three things yet. Maybe
yeah,
do it,
please.
All right, first
ladies
thing.
First.
All right. First thing, my girlfriend bought me a Kindle, which I've never really wanted a Kindle because I've got my phone and I've got my iPad and I read on those, and I've got the Kindle Unlimited subscription, but I've gotten so much joy out of reading on this device that can't do anything but show a book. So there are no distractions. It's very, very peaceful, which I think I've just been so used to reading on my iPad and my phone that I've forgotten how relaxing reading a book can be. And I find myself reading for longer amounts of time, and more engaged reading, just because I have this little piece of plastic. No, it's not even a pretty product, but it's black and white and it does the job. So I'm really enjoying that.
So with you, I have been for so long. I love the mono-purpose device.
Yeah.
It just
I
means
love
that it's
Kindles.
another piece of technology for me to carry around with me. Not that
They,
it matters right now. But
they weigh like
yes, that is,
they weigh
and
like
that's
a
another point.
hummingbird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she got me the Paperwhite, which is like, it's tiny,
Yep.
which is
I
amazing.
love them. Well, now we get to ask, perhaps not this moment, but what's on your Kindle? You know, what do you read?
That'd be a good series. That'd be a good fluffy blog post for what's in your Kindle. I like that. All right, my second one, being maybe because I've been now back living with my parents for 2 months, which I enjoy spending time with them, but I'm so excited to get back to New York. I've been reverting back to things I liked as a kid a lot. And
So is your second thing Legos?
no, although Lego, I love the idea of Legos, but they're so much more fun as a kid when it was like you make something, then you play with it as a toy. When I think of Legos now, it's like I love the idea of going through the process of making a Lego, but then what would I do with it? I would just sit there and it'd be this cheesy plastic version of like a Star Wars spaceship, and then what do I do with that? But no, it's actually a sandwich that I used to eat constantly. It's a pickle and cheese sandwich.
So far,
pickle
so good.
But pickle is, Carly, you might be familiar with this, Branston pickle.
It's some English thing.
It's an English thing, and so it's not actually pickle. It's like pickled vegetables that are cubed up, and it's like cauliflower, apple, all this, and it's these little black cubes. Yeah. I know, just I don't know when we're all going to be together, but I'm going to
savory should not mix.
It's not, but it all tastes. It's in this like black vinegar sauce, and it's amazing. And it doesn't taste like you're eating a bunch of different things because it's all mashed together in cubes.
Like chutney.
Kind of, yeah. And
I don't understand why people like in no scenario is like a good idea to add fruit to savory stuff. But I know, let's add some sliced apples to the salad. Let's put some strawberries and balsamic glaze and perhaps some toasted walnuts and goat cheese on the salad. No!
You don't like a fruit and nut trail mix as a snack?
No, I don't eat trail mix. That stuff will kill you.
Or keep you alive.
Almonds and dried fruit.
Oh, no.
It's actually like in survival packs, but apparently it will.
Anyway, in the show notes, I'm gonna arm Carly with the right link so that everyone can see a real pickle and cheese sandwich. And my dad's been making bread, which is fantastic. So it's fresh bread with sharp cheddar and Branson pickle relish.
I'm super into this. I love all things pickled. I would eat a pickled apple in this medley. I love pickled cauliflower. Like yeah.
I have no experience eating anything else pickled. I don't like pickles, the actual pickles. So it's totally out of left field for me. But I was eating them when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And I tried to get some friends into it over the years, and everyone just takes one bite and they're like, what? No, what is this? So it's I don't know if it's an acquired taste or what, but it's very good. Maybe I'll send you guys jars of Branson pickle and you can try it out.
But it's totally I'm with Carly, the things you eat when you're a kid you love forever, you know, like my stepmom, she's from the UK, and so my half siblings grew up eating Marmite sandwiches, which is like spreading tar onto a piece of bread in my mind. But they, you know, they're still young, but like 11 and 16, they still love it. It's not a thing in Canada. It's like Vegemite in Australia. It's like, I think you, even though you didn't grow up to continue liking pickles, which I find bizarre, pickles so
I never liked pickles. I never liked them to begin with.
But then you like this, but yeah, it's something that
I will pick them off of a sandwich. Yeah.
I'm on Team Carly with this one. I can't get enough pickles. I think I have that Ayurvedic body type where it's like, oh, your body, George, just lots of pickles and oily fish.
Yeah,
Nothing
I'm the
else.
same though.
Only fish. Yeah.
But I've been
Pickles,
pickling stuff in this quarantine too, and we've totally just like bamboozled your three things. But I get excited about pickles. I've been pickling.
Bamboozled.
I pickled some red onions, which is they're
Mm.
so good on like everything. Also, pickled duck lasts forever. I pickled
Pickled
some
duck?
carrots.
Did you say pickled duck?
I definitely didn't say that.
That's what
I
it
think-
sounded like. Maybe that's Zoom being weird. So pickled what?
I think you
Red
said
onions.
stuff. No, you said stuff, but it sounded like pickled duck.
I
What
definitely
I
didn't
do
pickle duck.
on a Thursday is I find myself a duck or a goose, and I
No.
pickle it.
No, but I pickled carrots with some jalapenos, garlic, and white onion, and it's like all of these things they just get better the longer you wait. I pickled like little spicy Korean cucumbers, so the tiny cucumbers, and those just get spicier and spicier too. But anyways, you can
I'll
say
pickle
your
the
third
fuck
thing.
out of anything.
Yeah, I love pickled stuff. So I want to eat one of these pickle and cheese sandwiches.
But not an apple. Just
Yep,
pull
I
the
don't
damn
care.
apple. Maybe
I want.
It's when you in the show notes we'll list out all the ingredients. It is amazing how much they stuff into these tiny little black cubes. It's this medley of different and
I'm
carrots
into it.
are in there. Yeah, it's all kind of.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll make a sandwich for lunch and I'll post it on Instagram. I'll play Instagram.
Yes, please. I want to see a
play
photo of it.
Instagram.
There we go.
Play it.
Yeah. All right, my last thing. I want to bulk up the playlist a little bit. My good friend from college, Andy Praza, just released a song you should know by now, and I designed the cover art for it.
Oh, that's exciting. You're
yeah,
making
no,
shit.
Yeah, I mean, I've done all
I
this.
didn't know you
cover art
had
stuff.
that skill set.
I've shot music videos for him.
I
I'm
knew
just
that.
like a diehard fan of this dude, and he's one of my great friends. But he has always been this kind of singer-songwriter, kind of Americana stuff and jazz, which is great, but he was just never product market fit was difficult for him. And so he was getting kind of down about it because he wasn't seeing
Also, everyone.
everyone. But he was making this incredible music, but there just wasn't the audience for it. And now he was like, well, what if I learned FL Studio? I learned how to make beats. So now he's making this somewhat electronic music, but with his kind of jazz sensibilities. It's very, very interesting. And I'm excited for him because he should have started doing this 5 years ago.
Is it out? Like, can we hear it?
Yeah, it's available now.
Podcast?
Yep. And I'm using it as
Very
the.
good.
I want to see your art too.
Yeah, well, that was cool because he did this music video for it, which is completely legal. But he just took a bunch of clips from different movies and performances of artists, like people dancing, and smashed them together, kind of put it in
So
time
he
with.
infringed on
the song.
copyright at all turns.
Yeah, completely.
He violated all applicable copyright law.
But it's cool because he chose movies that had like very vintage feel, or he chose concert footage from like the 50s, and then used this VHS font. And so he had this interesting aesthetic of like vintage and then with a 90s retro overlay on it. And so I tried to do that with the cover art, and it was a lot of fun. And I think the world of this guy. So I'll share the music in the podcast or in the playlist. And just to throw one more song in there, Alex Deason released this new song called That Much Is True. He's been releasing a new one every week, but this one is very like Tommy Stinson bash and pop kind of sounding.
Oh,
and it's
my man. How do you even know who Tommy
that.
Stinson is?
We talked about this. I worked with him at Pledge Music and the Replacements. I saw the when the Replacements played Boston Calling with their
When they
like their last reunion show. Yeah. How do I know? Because they've inspired every single.
All right. But you'd be surprised. Not a lot of 21-year-olds or however old you are know.
How old do you think I am?
21, apparently.
I
That's a
don't
genuine
know. I
question.
never know
How
how
old do you
old
think I am?
anybody is. I don't know. 45.
4010? Did you just make up a number?
I don't know how old you are.
27 on Tuesday.
Oh,
Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
it makes you a Pisces.
Nope. Gemini.
Wow. Oh, I was going to say, that's impressive.
Not that it means anything. Although I had this one crazy
Yes, it does.
experience. I had this one crazy experience in college where this dude that I had met
No, I know
like
what it
maybe
makes you.
I was at this group dinner thing, and this guy was talking about horoscopes, and I was just like, oh, well, I don't believe in that stuff, blah blah blah. He asked me 3 questions. I don't remember what they were, but they were just the most whatever questions. It's like, what's your relationship with your brother like, and what do you enjoy doing? 3 questions, and then as soon as I answered the third
what's
one,
your sign?
no, no. What's your date of birth? No, but it was crazy because right after I answered the third question, he's like, Gemini. And it was wild to me because I didn't know, it was just such vague questions, but he just got it. And so that scares me a little bit because I don't like being defined by what month I was born in. But anyway.
I do. I am a Sagittarius. Yeah, happy early birthday.
My girlfriend has this phone app that gets a notification every morning, and it's like a satirical horoscope. And so it's like your whatever for the day for, I don't even know what, I think she's a Taurus maybe. No, but what, yeah, her horoscope for the day is, it's like everyone knows that you're faking it. It's just,
Oh,
so good. All right, anyway, who's next?
Carly.
George?
Ladies first.
So my first one isn't dark, but it's not the happiest, but I think it's the most important. I don't know if either of you, actually I just saw it today, but I think that it warrants a place on my top 3. The front cover of the New York Times. Have you guys seen that yet?
Yeah, the 100,000.
Yeah, the 1,000 names. They put out 1,000 names of people who have died of COVID, which is only 1% of the total deaths in the US so far. But I think apparently it's the first time in like decades that the New York Times has had an only text front page. But also I was looking through it this morning, and it's not just names. It has their names and their age, but it also has, sometimes it's just the occupation, or it has like a really sweet anecdote or, a nickname or something. And I think I think actually the New York Times has been doing really cool visualization stuff on their front page. Like they also had the number of unemployment claims that shot all the way up to the top. They've been, I think, playing with the visualization of storytelling in a really interesting way. But this I found super profound and simple, and it's also just one of those reminders. It's like, it's not just numbers, they're people. And when you read like, I don't want to say one person's name, but like name, age, and like mother of 3, or name, age, also known as like some silly nickname that just kind of reminds you. So I only saw it today, but I knocked off one of my top 3s because I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. And so that's today, May 24th, the cover. Gets 3 stars for my 3 things. On a lighter note, one of my 3 things is going to be a fictional character, Moira Rose. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with Schitt's Creek.
Oh, is that the Schitt's Creek?
Yes, yeah.
Catherine O'Hara's character. So I finished the series a couple weeks ago. It only finished, I think, like, I don't know exactly when, but recently. I love the show. The show, when it first came on, to be honest, it didn't really stick for me. I watched it, okay, yeah, it's fine, and then I never continued it. And since I've been out here, it's also like a super Canadian show. My sister was like, you have to watch it, it's so good. So I kind of went back and restarted and have managed to watch 6 seasons of a show in my quarantine. But I think all the characters are great, but I still think that Moira Rose is the best character. I think that Catherine O'Hara is just, she's so amazing. There's a whole, like, her vocabulary is amazing. Her wardrobe is amazing. And this past week, Vanity Fair did a photo shoot with Moira Rose, not Catherine O'Hara, but by drones. And it's like, it's just perfect. It's so perfect. Aww. She's like in a ladder, like trimming a tree in like a Moira Rose outfit. And then, she's by the pool in another one with one of her wigs. And that whole part of her character, that the wigs are like her children. Moira Rose, I think, is one of the best characters I've ever seen on a TV show. So that, just as her character is my top 2 thing, but I will also definitely link to that Vanity Fair drone photo shoot, which I also really like how magazines are approaching this time right now. Like people are taking their own like cover photo shoots, or this drone shot I think is interesting, but she's just so perfect. And then my third thing, I have just become totally obsessed with my face jade roller tool. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of these. You're both looking at me. Okay, Dan's nodding. George is like, I'm speaking a different
I don't
language.
understand them. I've rolled my face, my girlfriend. Why can't I just go like that?
Well, it gives a lymph drainage massage, and so there's two jade stones
I don't
on
want a
either
lymph
end.
drainage massage.
Why not? I mean, for
What
puffy
does it do?
eyes.
I don't want my lymphs draining.
But it's good for puffy eyes in particular. It just like activates blood flow. And I normally am not a great sleeper, but I've been sleeping really great this last week. But sometimes I feel like I wake up and I just like, because normally I don't sleep that long or that well, that I wake up and I just feel tired. But now I'm like waking up with like pillow lines on my face. Like I'm just like sinking into my bed at night. And it's such a nice, it's cool stone as well. It gives you a little perk in the morning. It helps with blood flow. I'm a jade roller convert. Apparently,
I'm getting one.
Jennifer Aniston attributes like her overall skincare regime to the fact that she has used a jade roller religiously for like decades.
I'm getting one.
Anyways,
yeah,
I recommend it. Yeah, and like if you put on, if sometimes for me too, I use a right now I'm using a Kiehl's almost more like serum cream in the morning. Put a little bit of that on, and then use the jade roller. Also, just like really massaging your cream, or sometimes I use the sheet masks, and you can like use the jade roller on top of that. But it's relaxing. It's something just kind of has become a little bit of a morning ritual for me, which I like. But I really do. If I spend even just a few minutes, like I see the bags, the pillow lines, they go away.
You should
so that's my third
get one,
thing.
Dan, you should get one for your gross apple pickle thing to roll on you with your jade roller. I'm gonna get one of those though, because since I've been in quarantine, like I'm getting the super like hound dog eye things, and it's like, and so it might be a little bit of the Covis or what, but I'm gonna get that jade roller and drain my lymphs under my eyes. Oh, and back to Kathleen O'Hara, like we should note that Fred Willard died. That's a drag, right? Because he was in a bunch of movies with her, the Chris Guest movies, Guffman or whatever, and they were, I always think of them kind of as a, in a Canadian thing. I mean, they all came out, I think, of SCTV. But yeah, she's great. I gotta watch it. I kind of like had the same vibe as you did. Like I've watched a bunch of the episodes, and they're fine, but I had enough people in addition to yourself whose taste I really respect and admire. I know there's something there. I just haven't gotten there yet, but maybe this will push me over the
edge. The character arc and the character development in the show is just so sweet. I honestly like all four of them are amazing. Eugene and Dan Levy wrote it, mostly Dan Levy actually, the father and son, and then they're not a couple. Eugene's daughter, Dan's sister, is also in the show. She's Twyla, the waitress. But it's also like it could be anywhere in Canada, but I do feel like it's particularly like an Ontario or Prairie type of show. It's just the whole kind of story is ridiculous, but also it's like any show that's ending. The sixth and final season was also like just particularly sweet because the characters know the show is ending. So like the wrap up of a show becomes something. I think the show itself though only really kind of took off in the last little bit. Like it wasn't a smash hit from season one. It kind of grows on you. It grew on the audience, but the dynamic between the four of them is really cool. And yeah, like the one character, the Alexis, the daughter, I didn't like her the first season, and then like you can't help but love all of them. Like I just love her by season like 2 maybe. And then, but yeah, anyways, I really recommend that show. It's lighthearted, it's easy, it's so sweet, and Moira Rose is just worth it. Like, she kills me the way she pronounces it. It's like
I always
bouquet.
got
Like,
I've seen a bunch of episodes now. I get the kind of Seinfeld feeling where it's like you love to hate the characters.
yeah, they can all be super cringe too, but then you just find yourself like really rooting for them.
Like,
But
none of them are great people, but
yeah,
but you
totally,
watch it.
totally. I think Johnny Rose, that Eugene Levy's character, he's kind of the most redeemable throughout the whole series. But like, the kids are awful. Moira Rose can just be like, she's so self-involved, but the way that she talks, the way that she pronounces words, just like delights me. And
It's
sometimes I
fantastic.
watch, sometimes I watch Netflix. Often I watch it with subtitles. I don't know. It's just something that I started doing. And with her, it's actually really funny because they will, like, the subtitles when she's speaking, they put out phonetically. So like, it's not actually like the right spelling of the word. It's how she's pronouncing it, which is hilarious to me too, that they did that even in the subtitles. But anyways, those are my 3 things.
Take us home, George.
Well, it's got, I mean, it's also got Chris Elliott, who's always been one of my favorite characters in it, and this ties things together. So he was in a short-lived show. It's one of my favorite shows of all time called Get a Life, and in one of the episodes, he just plays like this adult who's still living at home. He just plays that kind of typical Chris Elliott buffoon, but he's like, his dad's like yelling at him about, oh, you got to do this, you got to get your act together, whatever, and he just turns around, could I have a cheese sandwich? Which I thought was funny, just because you've been talking about it. But if you can find Get a Life, and I think it's hard to find. REM did the theme song. They use Stand, which I think. Anyway. All right, so my 3 things. Okay, so I don't do this in the right order. So the first is I found this cool podcast called The Plot Thickens, and it's Ben Mankiewicz, who is kind of Hollywood royalty. His grandfather wrote Citizen Kane with Orson Welles, and his uncle wrote All About Eve, and so he's a bunch of seasons. But this first one, it's just X number of episodes with Peter Bogdanovich, who's one of my favorite directors, and it's just a total character, and really, really great, and just talks. I don't know. I mean, there's something about like Bogdanovich, like, was one of those just sort of like prodigies, right? I mean, he just brilliant dude, and started as he would write like monographs on like Citizen Kane or whatever, and then he did Last Picture Show with Sybil Shepherd. That was his first kind of big direction. He was kind of a mess too. He's kind of like he got success really early on in his life, and then he did Last Picture Show, then What's Up Doc, and then Paper Moon. So like just 3 amazing movies in that time period that I love so much, the kind of early mid 70s time. And then like now he's like the biggest director of the world, and he does Daisy Miller with Sybil Shepherd, who was he kind of made her a star in the Last Picture Show, and then they had a thing, and everything falls apart. And like the audience, like at that point, he'd gotten over his skis, and we see this a lot more in celebrity culture. I'm not going to talk about the people, but everybody knows like that they get it too fast, too soon. They get overconfident. There's that hubris. It's that, Icarus flying too close to the sun, and then the world just like, I guess we call it cancel culture now, but like it just shut them down. And so Daisy Miller, which isn't a bad movie, but just got destroyed, right? And then he just became this sort of pariah in Hollywood, and he's sort of built himself back up, but now he's old, and so he just talks really honestly and candidly. But the whole, Daisy Miller thing, it reminded me like Michael Cimino after Deer Hunter and Heaven's Gate, just like how the world was like, yeah, no, I'm just going to cancel you. So it's a really, if you're into like kind of Hollywood and those stories, it's fantastic. And there's a line in it that actually hit me so hard. At the beginning, Peter Bogdanovich says, I cry at quality. And like, that just hit me so hard, because quality, and if you've read like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance or any of those books, like it's quality is a value, a thing. So I cry at quality. I just love. So that was number 1 podcast called The Plot Thickens. My second one is there's a new Magnetic Fields record out, and so Stephen Merritt is someone who I think is like one of our great songwriters. I think he's like a you know, a Dylan or something. Like, he's a great American songwriter. I had the pleasure of working with him. He's a challenging human, but brilliant and great. And a lot of his records have certain themes, and the ones that most people know, if they know anything, is 69 Love Songs. And I was listening to an interview with him a while ago, or reading it, and he was like, yeah, look, I mean, I know that I, no matter what I do from now on, I will be the guy that wrote 69 Love Songs. And one of my songs, The Book of Love, which Peter Gabriel has covered, he said, you know, people sing that at weddings, and that is true. I have sung that at people, like, someone asked me to sing that song at someone's wedding. So he's like, you know, he's a kind of canonical songwriter. But the new record is called Quickies, and all of the songs are under 2 minutes in length. And they're great. They're these little bursts. And I'm a fan of the short song. Like, I love Guided by Voices or whatever. And I don't know if I read it, or maybe Coldery told me the story, but, you know, I'm a big Pixies fan too. And I couldn't have been Coldery when they were doing the first record. Charles Black Francis, whatever it was like the producer, it must have been Gary Smith, was producing the record, and he was going to Charles and saying, look, these songs are too short. And so Charles took him to, there's this great record store in Boston, I think it's called Nuggets. And he took Gary, and he's like, okay, so I want you to go to the Buddy Holly section and pull out whatever Buddy Holly record you want, right? And tell me how long the songs are. And all those Buddy Holly songs are like 2 minutes, right? I mean, so, and at that point, it's like, okay, you win, you know. I mean, these are the greatest songs ever written, and some of those Pixies songs are short. So now Stephen Merritt does all these, and the one that jumps out at me is a song called "The Day the Politicians Died," and allow me to quote a few of the lyrics: "Billions laughed and no one cried the day the politicians died. Celebrations spread worldwide the day the politicians died. Even their own mothers, their husbands and wives said, 'Now all men are brothers. Let's get on with our lives.' Billions laughed and no one cried the day the politicians died." Because, look, you could put a rock up against Trump, and I would vote for the rock, but not the actor. Like a literal rock, a stone, a pebble. And, like, you know, Biden is, but I mean, he's deeply flawed. Like, he seems to have empathy or whatever, but it's like, man, all these people are just horrible, you know. It's just, so I thought that Stephen Merritt captured kind of a moment. And then the last one, and I'm gonna read this too, because it hit me really hard. I don't know when it was, or the context or whatever, but it's like every once in a while you remember why the internet is good. And there was this David Bowie video that's been floating around, and I'm just going to read it because it's short, but he says, "Never play to the gallery. Work for other people in what you do, or never work for other people in what you do. Always remember that the initial reason that you originally started working was because there was something inside yourself that if you could manifest it in some way, that you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society. I think it's terribly dangerous for an artist to fulfill other people's expectations. They generally produce their worst work when they do that. The other thing I would say is that if you feel safe in the area you're working in, you are not working in the right area. Always go a little further in the water than you feel capable of being in. Go a little out of your depth, and when you don't feel your feet touching bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting." And it's like, I mean, the guy was so perfect. and I'm always telling artists, and you, Dan, you've said product market fit 5 times during this podcast, and it's so right. But artists always err on, I have to change my music in order to make it be what the audience wants. And I'm just begging every artist to stop doing that. If you don't believe me, believe David Bowie. Make what you make, and work to find others who feel better about themselves when they hear your work. That's the way it works. And swim out a little farther than you think you can. It's what I said at the beginning of quarantine. Aim a little higher, right? Or else you just get stuck.
I think that's a really nice kind of point to end on.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
I'm going to go make a pickle and cheese sandwich.
Enjoy it.
No apples. Talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.